So got the trench dug for the footer. It's about 9 inches deep, about 9 inches wide, minimum. Some places it's 10 and maybe even 11 deep. So yeah, this will be the footer. I'll pour this separately. I'm going to put rebar in it, and then we'll also, when we put the rebar in, we're going to tie in, we're going to drill in pieces of rebar into the tire bells there. I don't have a tire bell there, but I have some rammed earth tires there. I'm going to drill 2 or 3 pieces of rebar into those as well, so they'll be sticking out to give it just some tie into the wall as well. Okay, good. So I just welded this up in the garage. It was out of the wind and out of the sun and easier. Yeah, I know you can tie it with wire. I feel good about this though because I'll be able to keep it more centered, and I'll be able to build around it more easily without anything shifting on me. So good, and it's an excuse to weld, of course. Okay, pretty excited. Got the rebar frame in. So I have 1/2 inch, 2 1/2 inch pieces all along the bottom. And shut this off. This is 1/2 inch pieces that come up as well. I use a 3/8 across the top just to tie it together. I don't think it needs anything super strong along the top. I started to put another piece across the middle, but I just think this is going to be plenty. Once the footer's in and hard, this is going to be pretty dang rigid with this 1/2 inch. So these 3/8, these were leftovers from my concrete forms for my bond beam. And so they were cut pieces, 16, 18 inches long, however long, and they had a beveled cut on the end. So that's what I used to drill in here, drill in and drill into the tires. And then I tied it with wire after I raised it up off the bottom. And that's just like a 1x2 or something, or 1x, I don't know what that is, but it's about 3/4 of an inch thick, those little boards are. And so it's about 3/4 inches off the bottom everywhere. So then I welded it in to these pieces that are tied into so there's a weld there, a weld there, a weld there. So, maybe a little hard to see in this light, but I plumbed it with the level, and it's very level, so it goes pretty much right down the middle, nicely there, and pretty much down the middle right here as well. Now I ran out of 3/8, or I ran out of 1/2, so I ended up using 3/8 here, so I doubled the 3/8 here, and just like I did here. Welded those there, welded it there, welded it there, and I know you concrete guys are laughing at me right now because I don't need to weld this at all. Obviously, once the concrete's in, the welds are pointless. But I didn't want this shifting around and moving or me bumping into it or whatever, so it won't now. So I just drug the MIG welder out here and ran it on 120, and that's the cool part about this Miller 211 is you can run on 120 or 240. It's pretty cool. So if I'm in the garage, I always just run it at 240 just to maximize the duty cycle. Because it does get used, and I run it a lot. All right, got the footer poured. Got a little bit done today. A couple things about this footer. It was 10 by 10 by 22 feet long. So online concrete calculator, I clicked footer, and that way the width and the height was in inches, and then the length was in feet. So that made it a little easier. So 10 inches by 10 inches by 22 feet came out to like 27 bags of the 80-pound concrete bag mix. So at my local hardware store, that's $6 a bag, which sounds like a lot, and it is kind of a lot, but that's what they charge. And so that came out to like $180. For another $40 delivered, I had my local concrete company show up and bring me a yard of concrete. Now this only calculated out to 0.7 yards, but the concrete company would only sell me 1 yard. They said we only mix a yard. We can't mix less than a yard. So fine, okay. I'll figure out what to do with the other 0.3 or whatever yards that I have left over. So we poured this. I ended up just making some stepping stone forms out of some 2x4s. And so there's some of those. Then I still had 2 wheelbarrows left over, 2 wheelbarrow fulls left over. So I just made this form, drop some rebar in it for reinforcement, and I'll use this pad for another project. But about this form, so for $40 more, I just had the guy just showed up and poured it in my wheelbarrow. So he poured it in one wheelbarrow. I'd roll it in here. While I was rolling it in and dumping this one, he was filling the other wheelbarrow. Brought that wheelbarrow out, got the one that was full. He was filling that one. I came and dumped this one. So I had this poured in like 15 minutes. Had it worked in another 10 minutes because all he did was knock the rocks down to give me a little bit of fine to the top and some cream to the top, and then just kind of spread that around a little bit. It's rough. It's not flat. It's not regular. And I don't care about that because I'm going to build a can wall on top of it anyway. So, and this is all going to be under, so it's not going to be seen anyway. So my father-in-law taught me always order about 10%. I think he said 10% more of concrete than what you calculate your needs at. So 10% more than your calculated need. Okay, so 0.3 yards was obviously a lot more than what I needed. But I'm happy to pay that. For $40 more, he just shows up and dumps it in my wheelbarrow, and I don't have to spend hours and hours mixing and lifting bags and bringing it in here. Now, had I been able to calculate 0.7 yards, and they brought me 0.7 yards, and I got 10% more of that, I've been short once or twice when I've ordered concrete, and I don't like that feeling. I'd rather do like my father-in-law taught me, order a little bit more, even if I have some left over, have something to do with it, have some little forms or some post holes dug or, whatever, just to dump it in. Have a plan for it in case you do have extra, but it's always better to have extra than not have enough. Although even if I had them deliver and I only had enough up to right here and that was all empty, I could have mixed 3 or 4 bags of concrete right out here in my cement mixer and just finished it in short order. It wouldn't have taken very long. So as far as pouring concrete on a project like this goes, like an earthship or like a greenhouse like I'm building, it would be so nice to just have all the forms built for the bond beam, for the footers, for the footer for the door, whatever else concrete we need, concrete for the posts, and just have it delivered all at once, pour it all at once, get it all done at once. That way you can move on with other projects. If you have several people that can work the concrete after you pour it, and that's awesome, but I'm pretty much doing this by myself, so I don't have that luxury, so I'm having to do this in stages, and I'm having to order smaller loads, and so I'm having to pay the $75 delivery fee. Of course, that $75 was included in the $220 total, but I think it was $135 a yard. I don't know if that's a lot or not. They did have to drive about 20 miles one way to deliver it, so that's fine. I didn't have to spend the day mixing concrete. And then as far as these little rebars go, these were just leftover 3/8 from the bond beam when I made the forms for the bond beam. So I just dropped them in about 5 inches each. And I don't know if it really needs it or not, but here's what the can wall will look like when I start putting cans in. So that's plenty width. I'm going to try to keep the can wall as far back here as I can, as far back this direction as I can as I build the can wall. So there'll be a couple cans here, and then I'll obviously have to pierce the can, drop it down, a couple cans here, and then stagger again. So that's fine. But I want I want the wall, as far as the thickness here, I'll probably build it more like this, just to give myself a little bit more clearance between this post and the can wall, because getting a wheelbarrow in here would be a little bit tight. So I did buy another wheelbarrow that was that black one's 26 inches wide. The gray one out there is 28 inches wide, and I guess I could cut the edges off or bend it in, or I don't know, maybe get a smaller wheelbarrow if I really need something that much shorter. Be able to wheel dirt in here and pile dirt in here. That's the thing, and pile the sand in, pile the gravel. We're going to be coming in and out here a lot with a wheelbarrow, so keep that in mind, how big your doorway that you make. This is a 30-inch door. I ended up just taking the door off when I was bringing concrete in, because that just made it easier. It just opened up the space. I didn't have to worry about the door flopping around, or I didn't have to tie it back. It gave me a little more working room. I wasn't banging into the door, so that made that a lot easier. Okay, that's enough on the footer. Next step will be start to build a can wall. Cool.